The ash and the ember. The scent of lavender and expensive silk in the great hall was suffocating. I stood at the very back, my spine pressed against a cold stone pillar, hoping to merge with the shadows. My stepmother, Lady Ilara, had spent hours ensuring I looked like a smudge on a pristine canvas. The dress was a sack of charcoal-colored wool, purposefully tailored to make me look thick-waisted and clumsy. My skin was coated in a drying clay that cracked when I breathed, mimicking the texture of a hag, and my hair, my only pride, was tucked into a tangled, matted wig. "Stay hidden, you little rat," she had hissed before we left. "If the king sees so much as a spark of your true self, I'll ensure you never see the sun again." I didn't care. I didn't want the just ruler Alpha, King Valerius. I wanted peace. I watched from a distance as he sat on his obsidian throne, his face a mask of bored cruelty. He was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Sharp jawline, eyes like molten gold, and a physical presence that felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. But he looked at the line of beautiful women before him as if they were nothing more than cattle. He was a man who felt nothing, a man who had never been aroused, despite the finest beauties in the land offering themselves to his bed. When the ceremony ended and the rejects were dismissed, I didn't wait for my stepmother. I slipped through the side servants' entrance and sprinted toward the moon-drenched gardens. I needed the disguise off. It felt like it was bruising my soul. Reaching the fountain, I tore at the wig, letting my silver blonde hair spill down to my hips. I grabbed a rough cloth and began scrubbing the clay from my face, the cool water revealing skin like cream and eyes the color of a stormy sea. I ripped the wire stays from my dress, letting the fabric drape naturally over my curves. I was finally breathing. The moon has a habit of revealing things meant to stay hidden. A deep, gravelly voice vibrated through the air. I spun around. Standing by the willow tree was a man. He wasn't wearing his crown. His shirt was unbuttoned at the throat, revealing the pulse of a predator. It was him, Valerius. But I was so lightheaded from the heat and the strange, sweet wine I'd found in the garden carafe that I didn't recognize him as the king.
"I only saw a man. You're not one of the dolls from the hall," he said, his voice dropping an octave. He took a step toward me, and the air between us charged with enough static to light a fire. "I am a shadow," I whispered, the spiked wine beginning to burn in my veins, making me bold. "And you look like a man who is looking for something he'll never find." He reached out, his hand hovering near my face. For the first time in his life, the beast inside him roared. I saw his pupils dilate until his eyes were solid black. The beautiful monster of his reputation vanished, replaced by a raw, primal hunger. Raw and ruinous. He didn't lead me to the palace. He led me to the old lodge, a place of wood and fur and fire. The spiked wine had stripped away my fear, leaving only a desperate, aching need. The moment the door clicked shut, he had me against the wood. His hands weren't gentle, they were frantic. He grabbed my hair, tilting my head back to expose my throat. "What are you?" he growled against my skin. "I have walked through a desert for 30 years, and you are the first drop of water I've ever tasted." He didn't wait for an answer. His mouth crashed against mine, tasting of salt and dominance. I wrapped my legs around his waist, feeling the hard line of his desire, the arousal he had thought was dead. He carried me to the bed, his hands tearing away the wool rags I wore. When I was finally bare beneath him, he stopped. He just looked at me, his chest heaving. He began to caress my breasts, his large, calloused palms circling the sensitive peaks, until I was arching off the furs, sobbing his name. He parted my thighs with his knees, his touch deliberate and worshipful. He was a king, but in this room, he was a servant to my body.
He moved into me with a slow, agonizing slide that made the world shatter. He was mad with it, the sensation, the heat, the way I fit against him. He buried his face in my hair, inhaling my scent as if it were his only oxygen. Throughout the night, he claimed me. He bit the curve of my shoulder, the sensitive skin of my inner thigh, and the nape of my neck. He marked me with bites everywhere, small, dark bruises that shouted to the world that I belonged to a wolf. It was sensational, a primal dance of teeth and skin that drove him into a frenzy of pleasure he had never believed possible. But as the moon began to set, the fog in my mind started to clear. I looked at the man sleeping beside me, the Alpha King. If I stayed, I would be a trophy. If I stayed, my stepmother would kill us both. I gathered my rags, my body aching with the beautiful weight of his lovemaking, and I ran. The silent hunt. The next morning, the palace was in an uproar. I watched from the kitchens of our estate, hidden back in my gray clay and matted wig, as the king's heralds rode past. "The king seeks a woman," the townspeople whispered. "A woman from the garden. A ghost." My stepmother was livid.
She threw a vase at the wall when she realized the king had rejected Serafina, not because he was cold, but because someone else had caught his eye. "Find her!" she screamed at her guards. "If you find a girl with silver hair and eyes like the sea, bring her to me. Not the king. Me." I kept my head down. I became the silent survivor. For weeks I lived in fear, feeling the faint throb of the bite marks he had hidden under my collar. I could still feel the phantom sensation of his hands on me, the way he had looked at me, as if I were the only living thing in a dead world. He was searching. I heard stories of the king visiting every village, every pack house. He wasn't looking for a face, he was looking for a scent. He was looking for the woman who had driven him mad. I thought I was safe in my ugliness. I thought the clay and the rags were a fortress. But destiny has a way of tearing down walls. The protector in the shadows. I was in the lower market, carrying a heavy crate of iron for my stepfather's forge, when the beautiful monster, Serafina, decided to have her fun. She tripped me in front of a group of drunken travelers. "Look at this pathetic creature," Serafina laughed, her voice like glass. "She smells of soot and failure." The men, sensing she wanted them to escalate, surrounded me. I dropped the crate, my heart hammering. One of them reached out, grabbing my arm, his fingers digging into the bruises Valerius had left weeks ago. "Get off me," I hissed, my internal wolf snarling. "Or what, little rat?" The man sneered, raising a hand to strike. The air suddenly went ice cold. The rowdy market fell into a deathly silence. From the end of the alley, a figure emerged. He wasn't in royal regalia. He wore the simple black leathers of a high-ranking soldier, but the power radiating from him was unmistakable. Valerius. He didn't know it was me. He only saw a woman being tormented. He moved like a blur of shadow and steel. Before the man could touch me, Valerius had him by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. "In my kingdom," Valerius said, his voice a low, terrifying vibration, "we do not lay hands on the vulnerable." He threw the man aside like trash. The others scattered. Serafina stood frozen, her face pale. Your Majesty, I didn't know you were patrolling." Valerius didn't look at her. He looked at me, huddled in the dirt, covered in ash and rags. He reached down to help me up. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Our hands touched. The spark was like a lightning strike. I saw his eyes change. The gold bled into black. He felt it. To bond. The memory of the night in the lodge. He looked at my face, squinting through the mud and the fake shadows of my disguise. "You," he breathed. The perspective of the hunted. I could feel my heart trying to beat its way out of my ribs. The way he looked at me. It wasn't the look a king gives a subject.
It was the look a starving man gives a feast. He knew. Even through the clay, even through the lies my stepmother had woven, his wolf recognized mine. "Leave us," Valerius commanded, his gaze never leaving my eyes. Seraphina sputtered, trying to protest, but one growl from him sent her scurrying away like a frightened rabbit. He pulled me into the shadows of a nearby archway, his hands gripping my waist with that same possessive strength I remembered from the night of the crimson moon. "I have spent every waking second smelling the air for you," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "I have questioned 1,000 women, and not one of them had the fire I felt in that lodge. Why did you run?" "I am nothing," I lied, my voice trembling. "I am a servant, a shadow." "You are my ruin," he countered. He reached up, his thumb rubbing against the edge of my jaw, smearing the gray clay to reveal the glowing skin beneath. "Did you think a little dirt could hide the woman who drove the Alpha King to his knees?" He didn't care about the market. He didn't care about the politics. He pressed me against the cold stone wall, and for the second time, the world disappeared. This time there was no wine. There was only the raw, unadulterated truth of our bodies. His kiss was desperate, a claim that marked my soul deeper than any tooth could. I felt his hands slide under my rags, finding the curves he had memorized in the dark. The sensation was overwhelming, the way he touched me, as if I were made of glass and fire all at once. I realized then that I couldn't hide anymore. Destiny isn't something you outrun. It's something you eventually have to turn and face. The game of hide and seek was over. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I was his. The royal inquest. The palace was no longer a place of governance. It had become a hunting ground. King Valerius had transformed. The just ruler Alpha was gone, replaced by a silver-eyed predator who paced the throne room with a lethal grace. He didn't look at the maps of the borders or the reports from the councils. He only looked at the door, waiting for the one scent that had haunted his dreams for a month. "Your Majesty," his beta Cassian whispered. "The High Lady of the Northern Reach has arrived with her daughters. They claim one of them was the woman in the woods from the night of the ceremony." Valerius stiffened. He remembered the night vividly. He remembered the way she had felt, fragile yet iron-willed, a silent survivor who had bloomed under his touch. "Bring them in," he growled. The beautiful monster's trap. My stepmother, Lady Alara, walked in with the confidence of a woman who had already won. Behind her, Seraphina was draped in a gown of shimmering moonsilk, her neck caked in heavy makeup. I was there too. I was forced to stand by the door, holding their heavy fur cloaks, my face hidden by the matted wig and the gray clay. I was the invisible shadow, watching the man who had bitten every inch of my body look right through me. "Your Majesty," Lady Alara purred, bowing low, "my daughter, Seraphina, was too shy to come forward sooner. That night, it was a blur of passion for her." "She ran because she was overwhelmed by your power." Valerius stood from his throne. The air in the room grew heavy, the atmospheric pressure of his alpha aura making it hard to breathe. He walked toward Seraphina. "Is that so?" he asked, his voice a silken threat. Seraphina tilted her head back, mimicking the way I had looked that night. "Yes, Valerius," she breathed, using his name, a mistake. "I have missed your touch, the way you held me in the lodge." I felt a surge of nausea. My internal wolf was howling, clawing at my ribs to let her out. That's our man. That's our mate. The sensory test. Valerius stopped inches from her. He didn't look at her face. He leaned in, his nose brushing the pulse point of her neck. This was a sensory interrogation. The room held its breath. Lady Alara smirked at me over her shoulder, a silent promise that once this was over, I would be disposed of.